from Double D for $10, and I want to read this. Hi, Billy and Ango. Fuck AEW. Wasted my night with that dog feces of a pay-per-view. Now we are going to get a dog feces from Young Bucks to waste more of our time. This company is garbage, hands down. Now, the reality is, really quick before I continue. Shout out to Robert Kilpatrick in the chat. My boy Robert. He just told a really good story of meeting me when he came to Detroit. And I just want to say, Robert, I still remember you, buddy, and that's why we go back and forth on DMs. Just little fun nod to a great story.
Shout out Robert.
That day will always shock me. That will always be a surprising day. So shout out to Robert. You made me feel amazing that day. Let's talk about AEW Dynasty. I think Double D is kicking us off in the right direction. I think the overwhelming consensus from wrestling fans last night was that AEW I think AEW really drove people away last night.
Mm-hmm.
I think last night was, I think one of the big things, Billy, and you could kind of like chime in here and let me know. I think a lot of times when there is outrage about AEW, from a company perspective, we saw it with like Cody leaving or Punk getting fired, then airing the footage. You don't hear too much of backlash coming from a creative standpoint. You might have your people who are like, oh, this is not good, this is not good. But the backlash that we are seeing yesterday, and agree, disagree, you let me know. But I think this backlash is worse than the Cody losing at Roman WrestleMania 39 backlash. And it's for a very specific reason, but would you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, I actually would. I would fully agree with that sentiment. I think last night, the way that it ended, and I think just the capitalization of it was honestly, I mean, I could come on here and I could yell at the camera and, oh, blah, 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 this happened, this sucked. No, like, it genuinely, like, I call me wrong for this, I don't know, but I genuinely have, like, the feeling of, like, just kind of tired, right? You know, especially somebody who vocally has, you know, tried to reinstate that feeling for myself for AEW. And obviously, you guys heard it here. The things I was saying was not a lie. You know what I mean? Coming on and defending Swerve the way that I did, I really felt strongly about Swerve Strickland in this position, right? That is something that I genuinely felt strong about. And to ultimately get let down. And then I guess the thing about it is after like everything takes place, right? After the main event takes place, you now start to see like how people would book it, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, the Young Bucks versus Hangman and Swerve. That was the furthest from where my head was at. Yeah. Like that never crossed my mind. I don't even think it even crossed yours. I don't think it crossed anybody's, to be quite honest. And the fact that that was what they came up with, and because don't get me wrong, there are people defending this. It's not just like a shit show everywhere. Yeah. No, people are truly trying to defend this. And that's their defense mechanism. And I think that is just, it's almost coward-like, right? Because you're coming out and defending something, and deep down, you know it was bad too. The problem is you refuse to criticize. And again, I still appreciate AEW. I love AEW for the things that they've done, but at the end of the day, they have to be open to criticism. And this is one of those circumstances where just defending them like this, it's like, it's just horrible. I mean, I can give you every analogy under the sun. Just overall, very overwhelming ending. I think Omer said it earlier, you know, the very WWE ending like of 2019, like we agreed. Just I don't know, man. I don't know what to say.
I gotta say, overall, the pay-per-view, like, great matches, right? Without a doubt. And then we'll talk more subjectively about, like, the FTR heel turn.
Yes,
like,
because
things like
it wasn't horrible all the way through and through. It was not.
I think the problem is, and this is where I really have a hard time even talking about this, because we talked about it Friday, we've talked about it Thursday and Wednesday. We talk about it often, right? But I said Swerve is not that guy. He's not that guy. He has not been built up as that babyface that could save AEW. And I feel like what we saw last night was, it really felt, in my opinion, and I hate saying this, but it really felt like AEW has noticed that Swerve was not that guy, and they're pivoting Swerve away from this. And that was their way to do it. Because, of course, I'm not stupid. I see the people talking about Hangman and Swerve tag teaming and stuff like that, right? Young Bucks versus Swerve and Hangman or whatever it may be. I don't know. But let's just make one thing clear, okay? And this is where I just want to be incredibly honest. When I said Swerve is not that guy, Billy, it's because they didn't position him through booking having some sort of huge babyface chase. But what did I tell you Friday? I said, at this point, I just want him to win because I need the Death Rider storyline to die. Right?
Yeah, which we all agreed on.
Okay, so now this is where I get frustrated. You haven't spent a whole bunch of time building up a super babyface to go and save the company from this disaster. The one guy who is over, who is a safe choice, was just passed through. Now it looks like you're pivoting away from this because clearly Jon Moxley will need another opponent.
For sure.
This all stems from AEW is doubling down on a bad storyline. That's what's happened here. That is what's happened here. They are doubling down on a bad storyline. And because of that, I was willing to say, hey, if you don't double down on the storyline and Swerve wins, it doesn't make the most sense. I wouldn't be the most creatively satisfied, but I would be happy because that's how bad the Death Riders thing is.
Dwayne Jackson
Give me a second.
$20. Ango, honestly, this is going to unpopular thing to say, but he was banking on Darby Allin to come back. Nobody wants to Darby as world champion, but I think that's the direction they're going.
There's a couple more super chats I will have to get through, but shout out to Dwayne Jackson and DJ for those super chats. I'll get to those in a moment. The problem is the Death Rider storyline is so bad that if they would have... Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, my bad. I think it said I was muted in OBS. Okay. The Death Rider storyline in AEW was so bad that it got to the point where people were like, hey, Swerve should just win. They should just kind of end this at Dynasty, right? The problem is they didn't do that, and now they're doubling down on this faction. They're doubling down on Jon Moxley as a champion. So the solution to this long term, it's very hard to figure out. When you compare this to Roman beating Cody at WrestleMania 39, everybody at least saw the vision of like Cody's being built up, he's facing adversity, he's going to eventually get the win. A lot of people agreed with that. AEW has not set somebody up for that level of success chasing Jon Moxley. So people wanted this storyline to end, and Swerve Strickland was your safe bet. They chose not to do that. They had the Young Bucks come out. They did this entire ordeal. Basically, what this has led to is Tony Khan shitting on his fan base. And then Tony Khan has the balls to go to a press conference and say that he's listening to fan feedback and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. I felt a certain type of way about that one.
But how do you say you're listening to fan feedback when this entire time the fan feedback has been, hey, this is not a good storyline? And listen, it's one thing to act like it's not, you're listening to fan feedback, or maybe some feedback isn't genuine, but even the sickos are coming out and they're in disgust. That's not the impression that you want to make. If your most hardcore audience, which by the way, I've told you 5 years ago, going to the hardcore fans, they will eventually turn on you. This is that.
Absolutely. I will never joke about Japanese fetish.
Absolutely.
It was the absolute drizzling shits. The Bandito finish was horrendously cringy, as was the main event finish.
You know what I'm looking at, right?
No,
Okay.